Good evening. This is Debra V. Wilson. It is Monday, the 31st of October 2016. The time is 1900 hours and approximately 49 minutes. That's GMT minus 6. And again, I'm just outside of Janesville, Wisconsin. The title of this podcast is, and this presents a good opportunity. I'll make it very short and quick. If you're following the news, wherever you might be in the globe, you will be aware of a bit of consternation and angst within the political sphere of the U.S. around the U.S. presidential elections. In particular, discussions around the director of the FBI, James Comey's announcement of last week, and responses from both Republican politicians and Democratic politicians, as well as news pundits, commentators, and the general public. I would, and then we're continuing to hear discourse chatter around Russian intelligence. In terms of elected officials and strategists with access, political strategists who are not elected officials, but who are in D.C. with a great deal of access that exceeds beyond the political access of the average citizen, I would have a suggestion. And my suggestion would be respectfully to find a way to get through the remainder of this presidential election season, which is just a little over 7 days now, a week now, because the 31st is almost over. I would ask that restraint be your guide. I would also ask that if you were an elected official in particular and you have concerns about James Comey's behavior, which you have a right to have concerns and critique, that as opposed to your go-to place being the news, I would suggest you work your access, that you utilize your access. The media, going to the media is fine for elected officials, but that typically, from my perspective, is one of the tools that we as civilians use when we can't get access to the connected people, the right persons within the government. I would expect our elected officials collectively to either collectively or individually to have some access and to learn how to access the necessary resources to address their concerns. There's certainly nothing wrong with going to the press. Like any other American, you have the right to go to the press, but I would suggest respectfully that your first go-to place would be to try to work your access and to go through the system. The next thing I would say is to remember that unlike many election seasons for a leader, the election of the U.S. president has global interest, and this election, as always, is watched by the globe. In recent years, it's been easier with social media to watch the elections. I would remind elected officials that while you're not responsible for what people do with your words, with your actions, to remember not to make it easy for people who have less than the best interest for the social cohesion of America. And in that light, I would continue by saying, if as elected officials you're concerned about the behavior of the director of the FBI, or if as a Democrat you're concerned about the behavior of Republicans in terms of their service and the legality of what they might be doing, or if you're, and or I should say, concerned about the Russians or any other foreign actors influencing American elections, as representatives of the state, of the populace who occupy, and we are the state, I would expect you not to show up on the news and voice that without first working the system. My suggestion would be to reach out if you do feel you can reach out to the FBI face to face as opposed to having the discussions on television. I would do that. If you feel like for whatever reason you can't, you have Homeland Security, you have the CIA. In addition, I would suggest to all participants who work in D.C. regularly not to be, you should be concerned if Russia or any other foreign actors are having undue influence on American elections. Again, if you believe that, you should be concerned, but I do not think hyperbolic speech does any of us any good. It only amps up what is already a particularly angst-filled election cycle. I would suggest you reach out to one of the intelligence communities. I would suggest you have someone speak to you. In addition, this is an opportunity for U.S. officials who are elected by the populace to learn a bit about the world. If you're located in Washington, D.C., which is the political capital and the capital of the nation, and that nation is the USA, Russian intelligence officers are already there. They may not be aggressively approaching you as the Democrats or the Republicans, but they're already there. That is the nature of the beast that is the intelligence community. In London, England, you turned a corner and there was a foreign intelligence community operating, sometimes in ways they're not supposed to, sometimes they're just there. That's the nature of the beast. So this is a time for American officials to accept reality. If you have concerns about Russian intelligence or any other foreign intelligence or foreign actors having any inappropriate interactions with any American or any American institution, reach out to your intelligence communities in D.C. and ask, what's the best recourse for handling this? I would be very shocked and extremely disappointed if their response would be to go on the news and say that the Republican Party or any political party in the U.S. had been co-opted by foreign intelligence. Here, this particular time in history presents a great deal of opportunities. It's an opportunity to learn more about the world. Respectfully, I would say it's an opportunity to learn more about Washington, D.C. Russian intelligence is already there, just as American intelligence is already in Russia. This is an opportunity, it sounds like to me respectfully, for our lawfully elected officials to learn how the world works and all of her nooks and crannies and complexity. This is Debra Wilson. It is Monday, the 31st of October, 2016, and as of late, just outside of Janesville, Wisconsin. Thank you.